Shalom. I would like to give all honor, glory, and praises to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Kakwadash. I would like to give double honors to the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone. Salutations to all you sincere Akim, pushing this word out across the four corners of the world. I have an article from newstarget.com, and the title says, Food Insecurity, a Growing Problem in U.S. America Turning into a Third World Country. And this was published on May the 10th, 2023. And it says, the number of Americans with limited or inadequate access to food is not only increasing, but is also much higher than what the government data shows, a new study has found. Food insecurity, as they call this phenomenon, is becoming especially problematic as inflation hovers near all-time highs. And since wages have stagnated in many areas, millions are no longer able to make ends meet like past generations did doing honest work. Every year, the USDA sends out a survey to collect data on Americans' access to and spending on food. The agency uses this data to inform policies pertaining to the causes and consequences of food insecurity. When the pandemic struck, the disruptions that PSYOP caused have worsened food insecurity across the country by as much as 1/3, meaning food insecurity has increased by about 33% compared to pre-pandemic levels. So pretty much this particular article just going into how America's homelessness crisis is continually getting worse. And where you have the most urban areas around the US hosting more and more tent cities. And California has by far the most homeless people within the US. And I will leave this article in the description box for you all to read for yourselves. But just going back to the title of this article, here it is. This is supposed to be the greatest nation on the planet, as they would say. And as each day goes by, more and more Americans are feeling that economic crunch due to inflation. And where you have the cost of living increasing, gas, energy increasing, and food also increasing. And now you have a number of Americans defaulting on subprime auto loans. And they stated that this is close levels not seen since the Great Recession. So therefore, this whole system is failing, which is systematically designed by the so-called powers that be to implode this place. And now you have a widespread economic suffering happening to these so-called Americans. And one of the key factors is food insecurity is a growing problem within the US. And now they are likening this so-called great country into a third world country, which shows us through the spirit that America is circling the drain. And that's a medical term when a patient cannot be saved or their death is imminent. So America is circling the drain where it's in a state of severe deterioration, and it's approaching its inevitable downfall, which is a part of those appointed visions Yahweh Ba'Shem Shai gave the ancient prophets. And that takes me to Habakkuk 2:1. I will stand upon my watch and set me upon the tower, and will watch to see what he will say unto me, and what I shall answer when I am reproved. And as it says in Proverbs 8:34, blessed is the man that heareth me, watching daily at my gates, waiting at the posts of my doors. So that's that divine office for the prophets by standing upon those watchtowers and sounding the alarm in the Lord's holy mountain, referring to the nation of Israel, cautioning our people through the spirit that danger is coming. And this is nothing but a spiritual warfare and throughout the art of war. And one of the main things you're supposed to know is to know your enemy. And according to Psalm the 83rd chapter, the tabernacle of Esau Edom is the main biblical arch enemy to the nation of Israel, you biblical Israelites. And the so-called powers that be, mainly from the tabernacle of Edom, they are systematically attacking this place on all directions to induce their enterprise, which is going to their NWO. So by being called into this, we're supposed to be on watch and warning our people and getting ourselves right in the spirit at the same time. Verse 2, and the Lord Yahweh answered me and said, write the vision and make it plain upon tables that he may run that readeth it. Verse 3, for the vision, and that's going into that divine inspiration Yahweh Ba'Shem Shai gave unto his holy prophets to declare what's going to be happening within these end times. And all of the ancient prophets had that spiritual insight of America's downfall, which we are currently in those times. So for the vision is yet for an appointed time, but at the end it should speak and not lie. Though it tarry, wait for it, because it will surely come, it will not tarry. So the prophecies might seem prolonged from time to time, but as you can see in today's time, things are really moving through the spirit. And that's because Yahweh Ba'Shem Shah is working on the minds of these so-called powers that be to enforce this NWO. And one of their main objectives is to delete this so-called middle class. And that aligns with Revelation, the 13th chapter and the 16th verse. And he calls it all, and that he is referencing to the nobility of Esau, Edom, both small and great, rich and poor. Notice it did not say anything about the ones who are between rich and poor, which is the so-called middle class. So that aligns up with biblical prophecies, which takes me to this article from News Target again, and the title says, California's homeless construct 2-mile long vehicle encampment in San Francisco's North Bay region. And this was published on May the 9th, 2023. And it says, California's burgeoning homeless population has converted a 2-mile strip of road in the North Bay region of San Francisco in a massive vehicle homeless encampment. The encampment, made up of 2 long lines of RVs, trucks, and trailers stretching for nearly 2 miles, is located near U.S. Route 101 in northern Marin County. The San Francisco Chronicle reported that there has always been a small homeless population encamped in their RVs and other vehicles alongside Bedford Road on the outskirts of the small city of Novato in Marin, right next to Route 101. But the number of people making the roads their own ballooned dramatically in recent years to around 135 vehicles now, fueled by acute housing insecurity and loss of income caused by the economic restrictions imposed during the C-19 pandemic. And a lot of these people that's suffering from this homeless crisis are not these drug heads you'll see in your local downtown areas. Like, these are working class Americans. And a lot of them were affected by this inflation, or they were forced to leave their jobs and they were not able to keep up with this high cost of living. But again, this is supposed to be the greatest nation upon the planet. And here you are with major population cities like Los Angeles, San Francisco, Sacramento, that have some of the largest homeless populations within America. But according to Jeremiah 49 verse 31, America is codified as Babylon the Great, and it's supposed to be that wealthy nation. Let's get there in Jeremiah 49 verse 31. Arise, get you up unto the wealthy nation, and that's referring to America, that dwelleth without care. Like, for example, you will have these different commercials that's promoting the help of these homeless kids from these other countries. And you really think that these prideful Americans care about that? And the reason being is because it's not at the doorsteps of their house. So therefore, they do not really care. But not knowing that some of these economic and hunger crises that we saw happen in Venezuela, Haiti, different countries within Africa would not be on any level of the scarcity that's going to hit America. And that's because America's that well-favored harlot, Babylon the Great. So it's going to suffer the worst decimation that ever hit any previous country or nation or kingdom in the past. So right here it says, arise, get you up unto the wealthy nation that dwelleth without care. So a lot of these Americans are prideful and carefree. They thrive off of conveniency. And on top of that, most of them are very lazy. So dwelleth without care, said the Lord Yahweh, which have neither gates nor bars, which dwell alone. Like back in those ancient days, you'll have those different cities that have those ancient walls or gates that were shut down at nightfall to prevent any type of harm done to those particular local citizens and keep their cities guarded from different foreigners or invaders. But within America, that city that dwelleth without care, you can freely and conveniently roam from city to city or state to state. And not even knowing that America is ripe for Yahweh Ba'Shem Shah to overthrow this place. And that takes me to Isaiah 24 verse 10. The city of confusion is broken down. And the city of confusion is referencing to America, also codified as Babylon the Great. When you go to the Hebrew word for Babylon, it goes into Babal, which means chaos, disorder, confusion. And that's the vibration that America pushes out, which is classified as that whore when you read the book of Revelation, the 17th chapter, that did corrupt the earth with her fornication, going into that westernization, that democracy. In other words, forcing their immorality or that NWO upon these other nations. So the city of confusion is broken down. And again, that's by Yahweh Ba'Shem Shah working on the minds of these so-called powers that be, mainly from the tabernacle of Esau, Edom. So this country, really a corporation of America, is really being broken down on all aspects. Economically, hence the supply chain crisis. that's affecting the everyday American worker. America is also being broken down spiritually and morally. Like the moral compass is at an all-time low. Societal decay, just like ancient Rome. And very, very soon, this place America will be broken down physically. Hence, World War III, and also by when Yahushua returns, that second coming, or the second death, and he's going to get his bidding upon this place as well, along with the chariots, the angels. So in all aspects, the city of confusion, or the city of disorder, referencing to America, is being broken down. Every house is shut up that no man may come in. Verse 11, there's a crying for wine in the streets. And that's going into that true understanding of Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahushua. You're going to have a lot of our people wondering for the true prophets of Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahushua when all hell breaks loose within the society and when Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahushua withdraw his righteous prophets. However, the scriptures say, seek the Lord while he may be found. So therefore, wisdom and knowledge is not going to be the stability for 2/3 of our people's times. So it's going to be a crying for wine in the streets. All joy is darkened. The mirth of the land is gone. And where you have America, that's in the spirit of the image of the beast, going into that ancient Roman Empire, they're heavy in that spirit of Bacchus. And that's going into that spirit of partying, revelry, and festivities. So all joy is darkened. The mirth of the land is gone. And that links with Ecclesiastes 12 verse 3. In the day when the keepers of the house should tremble, which goes into these different economists, or these different stock market watchers. And the strong men should buy themselves, and the grinders cease because they are few, and those that look out the windows be darkened, which goes into becoming gloomy, angry, unhappy, being oppressed, because this is that burden of Egypt. You have all the weight, the anxiety, the pressure upon these Americans dealing with the everyday stress of America, and now they feel hopeless. A lot of them are starting to see what America truly is, its true characteristics. Like, for example, this American dream illusion. So those that look out of the windows be darkened. Verse 4, and the doors should be shut in the streets when the sound of the grinding is low, which goes into how a lot of these Americans are being systematically forced to leave their jobs. Unemployment is rising now. And he shall rise up at the voice of the bird, and all the daughters of music should be brought low. So therefore, that heavy burdens of pressure, anxiety, and stress upon these Americans, and a lot of them are being awakened into this so-called Great Reset that's going to be done by Esau Edom on that left-hand side. They are going to bear arms and start being violent, especially toward these different local state lawmakers, politicians, because they know for the most part they cannot get the top nobility of Esau Edom going into these international bankers. So they're going to bring force and brutality toward these different local politicians. And that takes me to 2 Ezra 15 verse 16. For there should be sedition among men, which goes into these different riots, revolts, rebellions, and insurrections. And invading one another, they should not regard their kings nor princes, and the course of their actions should stand in their power. And that takes me right back to this article. And that's because you have a lot of these Americans that have totally invested their so-called hard-earned money. And that's one thing that these Americans boast about, is about paying taxes. So the spirit is going to be heavy upon them, wondering where did all their so-called tax-paying money go to? And we already know, going into the pockets of these different corrupt politicians, and more so toward the upper levels of Esau Edom, these different bankers. And according to biblical prophecy, they're going to take action within their hands. So that concludes the lesson through the spirit. Hopefully you all was edified. You all stay strong. Keep pushing forward. Shalom.